What's up, rock soldiers? Welcome back to the All Bets Are Off podcast. And for everybody that's just now starting to tune in on YouTube, I thank you guys so much for continuing to do that. We've been having a lot of fun. And at this very moment, I'm going to say welcome back to Chaz, who hasn't been here in how long, Chaz?
I don't have my soundboard set up, but if I had my soundboard set up, I would go, "It's been a while," but I don't have my soundboard set up. When was the last time? Was that like February for Kiss's 50th?
Yeah, I think that might have been the one.
Yeah, thanks, bro. Thanks.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
It's been
But
a while.
today's the All Bets Are Off Halloween special. We're only doing one Halloween special this year. I know in past years we've done more than one.
Well, that's
And
because I was on like every week then, and we basically burnt up all our ideas.
yeah, we used them all up in the first 2 years. I don't even think last year I did one at all.
Busy man over there.
I know, right? But what we're doing today is we're going to talk about five underrated horror movies each. So I'll do five and you'll do five. But we also have a bunch of cameos from past guests and some celebrity guests that are coming on to give their five as well. So those will be hitting the in-betweens in between ours. So we have, I believe, 5 or 6 cameos. So we'll get
Well,
to
remember,
those.
I have a fake podcast beef, and he doesn't know I have it with him, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be a part of this. So
Well, we're going to find out because before we each give our five, well, for us, it'll be underrated. For some of our guests, they're just doing their top Halloween picks. But before we give our five underrated horror movies, the Ace Holes have been,
who made that name up?
yeah,
Me, because this is my remember he pisses me off because he used to win guest of the year all the time over me, and this is bullshit.
this is true. So our guest of the year winner 2 years in a row,
Two
uh,
time.
and he's making his return this year in cameo form for our Halloween special. We're doing our five underrated horror movies each, and Mr. Ace Von Johnson is going to kick this off for us right now, and he's going to tell the Ace Holes what his five horror movie picks are right now.
Hey, Ace Von Johnson here, and you're watching the All Bets Are Off podcast for their top 5 underrated horror films for the Halloween season. Number 1, I've got The Willies, Castle Freak, Exorcist 3, criminally underrated, People Under the Stairs, and lastly, The Monster Club. Check them out.
And that's our first of a few cameos here, and I'm super pumped about it. And that was a great way to kick things off. And like I said, some of our people are just doing their Halloween picks, but his are actually underrated and they're good choices. So check them
So
out.
some of them are given their just top 5. You're saying?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
But
So they don't listen. They don't listen.
They don't listen. I told them what to do, and they were like, "Go to hell." So, but I think to start off this Halloween special between the two of us, I would like you to kick things off with your first underrated horror
Ready to
movie
get
choice.
spicy right off the rip, Robbie? You know it's coming.
I do.
You
I
know
do.
it's coming. And how, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad am I going to get like murdered by all the horror people?
You're going to get some heat for this because I know what it is, and I'm not happy about it either. By the way, I'm just going to show my shirt real quick.
Hey, we're
All right.
recording this on a Wednesday. So I have always stated for all your new listeners, since you don't bring me on anymore,
Yes.
that don't know, I'm not like a horror guy like you and your guys, but I'm like trying. I'm doing my best, right? So I've caught up in the past few years. I think I've done a good job with that. So now I know this is controversial, and so there's a big controversy in the world of everything's a remake nowadays, right? So, and that's true, and we know that's true.
Yeah, it is.
About what 80% of horror movies that come out right now are remakes, probably,
Yeah.
like, or sequels and stuff, right?
Yeah,
So
reboots, all that stuff.
yeah, but we're going back, Robbie. What year is this?
This remake?
Yes, that I'm speaking of.
Oh, geez. Was it 2010?
And that's what I was thinking. 2010.
Yeah.
We're going back to 2010 to a horror movie. What are the word? Horror movie snobs don't like this, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say, and not even just the snobs. I think a lot of horror movie people in general don't like this.
We're going with the 2010, I think, reboot of A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Ugh.
Okay, so
I'm gonna let you explain why,
so
and then
here's where I come from. It. So I always have heard how like terrible this movie is, and like just people give it such a bad rap. I was expecting utter trash, garbage, like almost to the point of funny.
Mhm.
And so my expectations of this movie couldn't be any smaller, right? Of how it is. Now, I have seen the original Nightmare on Elm Street. I've seen it with you quite a few times. We went to the movie theaters to see it. Not in the 80s, folks. We're not that old. Relax. But a few years ago, they brought it out, and we went to the theaters to see it. So I've had. It's not like I seen this remake first or anything,
Mhm.
and I don't think it's necessarily better. Okay, but my expectations of this was so low that when I watched it, I actually enjoyed it. I thought it rounded some corners that weren't rounded in the actual first movie, things that the 80s weren't ready to explore. Like, oh, he's a child murderer, so the whole town's going to kill him. Well, in the remake, Robbie, how did they approach it? What was he?
He was supposed to be a child molester.
Which makes a lot more sense. Where you know what I'm saying? Like,
Well,
given
to be
the
fair, in the 80s, he was also a child molester, but they just promoted it a little more, not as bluntly.
But that's what I mean. So even in the first movie, they never mention it. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And like they bluntly come out and say it. Like, if this guy is in your neighborhood and he's molested a bunch of children, their parents are probably going to go and find this guy and burn him alive.
No, I agree, but sometimes the backstory of these movies gets to be too much, and I think that's what they did with in this case. And there's going to be some spoilers in this episode. I apologize, but uh, go see the movie anyway if you haven't, and judge for yourself. But I didn't like that there was a flip flop of, oh my God, he was wrongfully murdered, and it was just there was just too
Okay, fair.
much, and there's
I
only
thought they,
one. There's only one Freddy.
of course, and that's the thing. It's like our generation, the generation before us, Freddy Krueger's such a weird and odd character. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
especially in some of the latter films, he turns into a cartoon character. I
yeah,
mean,
of
it's
course.
inarguable, right?
Hmm.
But like that first one, he's real and scary and all that stuff. But like what I did also like about the remake is he is a human being. You know what I mean? He's not an actual monster.
Yeah,
So like they made him a human being. And it was kind of like, and sure, yeah, he had the sleep and all that. But what I'm saying is like they focused a little more on the human being part of
mm,
it as well to make you, I don't know, I don't want to say feel for the character because you don't feel like you don't want him to win,
no,
but like it kind of makes you feel for everybody else in this situation too of why this happened, but also why he's doing it. Because even though he was wrong, he's probably a little mad that these people left him to burn to die. Left him to die in the fire.
yeah. I
I would.
mean,
It does make you feel for him slightly, and then you're like, wait a minute, fuck this, fuck
well,
this guy.
that's the swerve that they tried to throw in there
Yeah.
too. So it's one of those things where it's like, I guess I could kind of see where you're coming from, but I hated it. To me, there's only one Freddy,
Sure.
and
I mean,
that's
he's a hard
Robert Englund.
character to break.
Yeah,
Jason has no real personality, where Freddy is just
correct.
a ball of personality. So I understand that. And again, I'm someone on the outside, but you know what I compare it to, Robbie? You know I'm going to bring up Kiss.
Yeah.
How many times have people told you when we were growing up that Carnival of Souls is the absolute trash, worst album ever? Blah, 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 blah.
I think
Right?
did you just say music from the Elder?
Well, that too. But Carnival of Souls too. But I don't really like music from the Elder that much. But Carnival
Eh,
of Souls we actually like.
Yeah, absolutely.
But everybody else will tell us and still will basically tell us to this day that it's trash and it's awful, just like people do with this remake. So me going in, I was expecting I was gonna watch like a fucking old ass Ed Wood movie or something just like absolutely awful. And it just really wasn't it. The expectations were so low that I thought it delivered more, and that's why I think it's a bit underrated. I think some of you fucking horror nerds, looking at you, Robbie, I think some of you horror nerds gave it a really unfair shake, and maybe in a couple years it'll be long enough where you guys will be like, let's give this a chance again. So that's what I'm thinking someday.
We're gonna see because I do want anybody who's seen it to chime in on this, and I also want people who haven't seen it to watch it. I don't want them to take our opinions for fact here. I want them to actually go and watch it and tell us because a lot of people didn't like the Friday the 13th remake either, and I absolutely loved it. So
Great.
you know, it was one of those
You
things.
could skip the first 3 movies and just watch that one.
Just watch
No,
that one.
no, don't do that. Don't do that. Do not do that. But yeah, I thought that was great too. So,
Yeah.
and so at least you're batting 50% on the remakes of like in one of them.
I am.
So,
Well,
do you think that either of them are going to get remade again, like rebooted again, with the success of Halloween?
You know, I don't because I think if anything, you'll see more movies added than remakes. But that's just my opinion
With
because
those series?
yeah, because we've already got the Friday the 13th remake, which wraps all 3 movies into one.
So
We
you're
already got
talking about added to the remake or to the reboot.
added.
not
No, no,
talking-
no. I'm talking about added to the franchise in general.
So like Friday the 13th Part 11.
Exactly. Like I think we'd be more likely to see stuff like that because Halloween 1 and 2 already got redone.
Twice.
Nightmare already got redone. Right. And it's just like, you know, let the remakes go and you know, who knows, maybe
That's the only thing I think is like you had the remake in what 07 of Halloween and in what 17, 18 they rebooted it again.
Yes. 18.
So like so like, you know, maybe they're going to do this again because Halloween was actually the not Rob Zombie, the John Carpenter Halloween, the reboot was successful.
It was, but it was also an extension of the original Halloween. It wasn't exactly a remake. It was part 2, basically erasing the timeline from 2 all the way through.
Yeah, you're right. That is true. It was a bit different. Yep.
Yeah.
So, but you would never be able to do that with Friday because the hands have changed so much.
And because Jason went to space.
Spacing, but that's in the future, though.
Spacing, yeah.
Spacing. That's in the future, though. So. We'll get to that later, folks. Or, well, not that, but we'll see.
Well, we don't know. You don't know.
We don't know.
But here's what I do know is that since you went with Nightmare on Elm Street, and I'm adamant that there's only one Freddy, I'm going to go with an underrated horror movie featuring...
There's the other Freddy. There's Freddie Mercury.
That's true, but...
I'm stumped. I was trying to do another one, and I couldn't think of another one.
Because there's only 2.
Yeah, there's only 2.
But I'm sticking with a Robert Englund movie that came out in 2005, and this is one of my favorite movies since it came out. It is called 2001 Maniacs, and this is about college kids going down to spring break. They're going to Florida, and they pass through Georgia, and they take a detour, and they stumble upon a town, and it is still in the Civil War days, and the general is Robert Englund. And turns out that these spirits come back from the dead once a year, and they still live as if it's during Civil War times, and they are cannibals, and they do not like people from the North, and which is where these college kids are from. So as you could see...
Them Yankees, bro. Them Yankees.
Yeah. And now madness ensues, a little bit of comedy too, and Robert Englund does a fantastic job of being the general of this little town. And this I won't give spoilers on because I do think that more people need to just see it. But I promise you guys, it is a lot of fun. It's gory, you'll laugh, you'll cringe, and it's just a good movie. Have you ever seen this?
I have not, but you have talked about it glowingly, and it was always one that was like in my mind, but I've never seen it yet.
So this is one that I'm going to ask you to watch this Halloween season. But yeah, and Robert Englund is just such a pro, and he's so seasoned. I mean, obviously it's 2005, and the guy's already been around for decades at this point. So it's
there
really
any?
great.
Do you see any Freddy in this character, or did he do a good job separating it?
No, he separated it completely. Yeah, but it's definitely worth checking out, and I can't say enough good things about it. I actually found this at Blockbuster by accident.
What's that?
Exactly. I was walking through Blockbuster Video, and they used to have the little bin in the middle of the store that you can get 5 DVDs or 4 DVDs for $20 or whatever it was. And I was on the hunt for some new horror movies, and I picked it up, and I was like, oh, this is Robert Englund. I'm going to get it. And I threw it in my pile, and I ended up loving it, and I still love it to this day.
Does it still have the 5 for $20 sticker on it?
It does, actually.
That's what the most annoying part about those things.
It never came up.
No, never. So I haven't seen it. So this is how this is going to go. I'm probably going to name a bunch of horror movies, and we'll both talk about it. And you're going to name horror movies, and I'm going to be like,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
The way you like it.
But before we go on to your next choice, since we're talking about remakes and Freddy and Jason, the next appearance we're going to have on the show is by Lauren Marie Taylor. And she is going to give us her 5 picks for her Halloween movies. And obviously, I segued into that because Lauren was in Friday the 13th Part 2. She was in Girls' Night Out. She was just most recently in A Violent Nature, which came out just a few months ago, and it's available streaming right now on Shudder. And a new Christmas horror movie coming out next month, actually. So I won't spoil, anything about that one, but just be on the lookout for it when it comes out. So here's Lauren Marie Taylor with her 5 movies.
Hey everybody, it's me, Lauren Marie Taylor from Friday the 13th Part 2 and most recently In a Violent Nature. So here are my 5 favorite horror movies for Robby Vegas's All Bets Are Off podcast Halloween special. Really hard to pick, by the way, because there is so much awesomeness in horror spanning many, many decades, but I tried to pare it down for him and here they are. Number 1, and these are in no particular order, Get Out. Jordan Peele directed this. Amazing performances, lots of twists and turns. Next one is Midsummer. All these aesthetically beautiful people doing strange things, including getting themselves killed. Next up is Hereditary with my girl Toni Collette. Amazing performance, really creepy movie. Who can forget one of our favorites here at home, The Shining, with my guy Jack Nicholson and of course the legendary Shelley Duvall, along with Scatman Crothers, don't forget him. And finally, we have a very young Cillian Murphy running around naked and rampant in 28 Days Later. Just saying, they do that throughout the entire movie, and I couldn't help myself. Anyway, have fun, everybody. Happy Halloween, and butter up your popcorn. Mwah.
All right, Chaz, and now it's time for your second pick.
Well, I love me some LMT. Shout out to Lauren Marie Taylor. She is awesome. Total sweetheart. Great actress.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
We're cool. We've hung out with her a bunch. It's no big deal. It's no big. Relax, folks at home. It's no big deal. Okay, we're gonna go with since we're going there, I'm gonna talk about Friday the 13th part 7.
Underrated.
I feel that one's the most underrated one of the series. Like, it's kind of in the middle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone talks about the first few, and everyone makes fun of X. But 7 is so underrated because, like, spoiler alert, folks. I'm going to delve into this. First of all, it's got Bernie from Weekend at Bernie's in there, so like that's like huge. That's huge. But no, what is he? Is he the cop in that or something? He's the cops. But anyway, so basically what's cool about this movie is it's like Jason verse. You know what I mean? It's the first time he has a formidable foe. You had Tommy Jarvis, who's just some like scrappy dude they're trying to kill him.
Yeah.
But he has a formidable foe with the girl who has what do you call it? Telepathic powers?
Yeah.
She's basically Professor X in this motherfucker.
Yeah, absolutely. And
dropping shit on his head, like with her mind, like it sounds so silly, but it was done so well. Like he was having a hard time with this girl.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I thought this movie doesn't get talked about as much as any of the other movies in the franchise. Like from 1 through X, the remakes, like this movie gets widely ignored, and it's actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, and like I believe in this one, I haven't seen him in a while, but the way, because obviously he's got to get brought back to life every movie.
Yes.
I believe this one they're having sex on the boat and drag the anchor to pick up the underwater power line, and he gets electrocuted back to life. I think that's how that happens on this one.
The girl with the telepathic powers actually has something to do with him coming back to life. So it's
so cool because even like before I watched all these movies, and again, I mean, I didn't watch all these movies until the last 6 years or so. Nobody ever talked about this movie ever, and like going into it, I was like, honestly, I was starting to get a little stale. Like I've seen part 5 was like okay, part 6 was okay, and then this one came out, and I'm like, oh, it's getting a little fucking stale, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and like it was such a cool movie. And I think she was just as much of as a formidable foe, if not more, than Freddy versus Jason.
I was going to say the same thing, and she does a great job. we keep saying she and her. Her name is Lar Park Lincoln, and she is fantastic in this movie. And again, like people tend to shit on the franchises when they start reaching number 7, 8, 9, 10, and beyond. But if you give a lot of these franchises a chance, I mean, they're not meant to be Oscar-winning films. They're meant to be fun and campy and everything that horror movies are supposed to be. And I think that this one checks all the boxes.
Yeah. So a bunch of you probably haven't seen this one, and if you're, want to dive in somewhere with the Friday series, the first 4, but then jump to 7 because you don't really need to, unless you want to watch them all. I mean, 7's in the top 3 for me, probably. Honestly,
See, I love them all.
one. It might be 1 for me, honest to God.
I love them all, including 5 and 6. But I get, a lot of people have a problem with 5 because, well, watch it if you haven't, and you'll see. But
I didn't really have a problem with 5 or 6. 8, well, 5 I did have a little problem with. It was boring. It almost killed the series for me, I thought.
Oh wow. Okay.
8 was kind of boring because it's Jason Takes Manhattan for 10 minutes.
Well, we've had a lot of people on the show that have been from the Friday the 13th franchise, probably more people than any other movies that I've ever interviewed. And one of my favorites is also Part 6, and Darcy DeMoss, came on the show and all that stuff. And that
CJ Graham too, right?
CJ Graham as well. And, obviously we just heard from Lauren Murray Taylor, and she's done the show multiple times. And so we're a huge Friday the 13th franchise supporting podcast. We've had people on from so many different, ones, including Part 5.
And we've been honest about them.
Yeah, we have. Absolutely.
And folks, go in the All Bets Are Off podcast archives on Spotify or wherever you listen, and you could look like 3-4 years ago, one of our Halloween episodes, we're ranking the Friday the 13th series. And you probably go back, and I probably lied about something because tastes change, maybe.
I was just going to say I'd be interested to see if I still stand by my ranking because as years go by and I rewatch them, and I already started my rewatch for this Halloween season, I do change my mind.
Yeah.
There's I'll go through and go, I might have bumped that one up higher on my list than what I actually said,
Maybe that's an episode in the future. We break down our podcast from 4 years ago.
We break down the breakdown.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go with my second pick at this point, and that is going to be, I got my list over here, Serial Mom from 1994. Now, again, have you seen this? All right, so
that was way over my head for folks on the audio.
The reason why I picked this, and thanks for bringing up that we're doing audio and video, because I got to thank all the YouTube subscribers again, because you guys have been doing an awesome job with all the liking and subscribing, especially because it's new for ABAO. We didn't always do this.
And YouTube is fun because of comments and shit.
Right. So this movie is obviously a horror comedy, Serial Mom, which is about a serial killing mom in the neighborhood who presents herself to be this like old school, like 1950s type of mom. Obviously, it doesn't take place in the 50s.
So it's modern day 90s.
Yes, exactly. And one of the stars in the movie is a very young Matthew Lillard. And he is fantastic and very funny, and of course, much like his character in Scream a couple years later, is obsessed with horror movies and thinks that it's so cool when his mom gets caught for being a serial killer. And it's a really, really good movie, and it streams on a bunch of different services, and I think right now it might even be on Netflix. And this is one that I watch like periodically throughout the year because it's great for a laugh. And if you're somebody who doesn't necessarily like blood and guts and gore and all the actual like horror elements of horror movies, this is a fun thing to watch with your friends who do love horror movies. So check it out if you haven't seen it. Severely underrated, and now it's on Chaz's list too.
Yeah, that sounds fun. It sounds like one of those like Halloween, or it doesn't sound like a Halloween movie. It just sounds like a goofy early 90s movie.
Yeah.
Don't tell mom the babysitter's dead.
Right. I throw it in the same category as movies like Idle Hands.
Oh, I love Idle Hands.
Yeah, it's just like that. It's just like that. I believe that's pretty good. I believe that the sister to Matthew Lillard is Ricky Lake in Serial Mom.
Oh.
So
I had Idle Hands on VHS, by the way.
Did you?
I did.
Oh, such a good movie.
It's not on my list, but that's another one. Honorable mention to Idle Hands, Jessica Alba.
Yes. And what was his?
Devon
Sawa, yeah. I never know if I'm saying his name right.
Well, I mean, he's pretty much gone.
He is pretty much
I
gone.
don't know if he's still. I don't think Jessica Alba's still a thing.
But before we get to your number 3,
Jessica Alba?
yes, Jessica Alba's here. I am going. This one is not a video. This is one that I'm going to read off. This is from Kat Scarlett, who is on keys for Nita Strauss, and she is a giant horror movie fan. So hers are absolutely underrated because she knows exactly what she's talking about. So let me read off word for word what she sent me here. She said, I was watching Terrifier 3 the other night, amazing movie, when Robby asked me what my top 5 underrated horror movies were. So in no particular order, As Above, So Below, The Platform, I never say this one right, but I think it's Titan. I'm pretty sure that's right, but I never say it right, so I could, I'll get roasted for it in the comments. Saint
They'll be
Maud.
focused on me, bro. They'll be focused on
Yeah, Saint Maud and Helter Skelter, 2012.
12.
And these movies, I've seen them all, of course, and they are all fantastic. And I thank you, Kat, for taking the time to send that in. And now Chaz is going to give us number 3.
They must be underrated because honestly, as a bit of an outsider, never heard of them. So,
They're severely underrated, but
Yeah.
they're very good.
and I've heard a lot of good things about Terrifier 3, by the way.
Me too. Haven't seen it yet. Just going to throw that out there.
You call yourself a horror guy.
I know.
Boo this man, folk. Boo this man. All right, so we're gonna go one that's right down your alley here, and it's one that you forced me to watch, and I feel it kind of segues with that campiness of the last movie. And we are going to talk about the OG. What year, Robby? 1984? A Fright Night. Is it
85.
85. I was
Yeah.
close. That's close enough. So you forced me to watch this. Like you
I did.
literally, like, you were like trying to make me watch all these movies, and you were like, no, this one you have to watch. Like, this is the one. And I was like, fine, I'll do it. And then I watched it, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is fun. It's very fun, but serious.
Yes.
At the same time. Like,
Yes.
it's a bit campy,
Mhm.
but like, it's still serious. And like, yeah, it was just like a very surprising, and I think it's almost a quintessential 80s horror movie. The campiness is perfect, but the scariness is perfect. It's not insane, but it's
I
still
agree.
scary.
Yeah, it's the practical effects are great.
Yeah.
It's by far my favorite vampire movie of all time, and I do feel like it's underrated. I know that it was successful. It had its success, but as years go on, it tends to be forgotten about. And I think this movie is just absolutely perfect all the way around for every reason that you just said. The campiness, there's a little bit of comedy. The cast was perfectly chosen. Chris Sarandon does an amazing Jerry Dandridge, great vampire, and just again the practical effects with blood and transformations and the makeup and everything about it screams 80s horror, which to me is the best decade for music and horror. So, I'm all in on this movie. And Peter Vincent, the great Peter Vincent from the Fright Night TV show, which was loosely based on Vincent Price, was just fantastic.
Yeah, and I know. So we can speak, since we're speaking of it. You can speak to the remake. Did we like the remake? Because I never seen it.
I didn't like it or hate it. To me, it just was. But what it did lose, which is why I don't generally watch. I've seen it one time, so maybe I need to watch it again. But why I didn't watch it again is because it lost the charm that the original movie had. There's a certain 80s charm that the original Fright Night carries that you can't recapture, especially because they tried so hard to modernize it. And that's not to downplay Colin Farrell, who's a fantastic actor, but there's a charm to the original that you just can't remake.
Okay. And I think at one point you told me this was your number one horror movie. Does it still stand there?
It's up there. It's probably tied for number one with Scream.
Okay. At
And
one
if
time you said that was the one. So
yeah, if you include Jaws and horror movies, those are probably my top 3.
why not? It's a big monster movie. But then we've had this conversation before.
I know. I consider it a horror
personally-
movie.
Okay, so you consider Jaws a horror movie, a big fucking monster eating people and
Mhm.
killing people. So then what about like King Kong and Godzilla?
I also consider those in the horror family. Well, especially King Kong. Godzilla, maybe the older ones. I don't know about the newer ones,
Well,
but I mean,
he's kind of a baby face in the newer ones.
he's a baby face in some of the older ones too, which is kind of weird. But you know, I consider them all in the family. When you go to horror conventions, there's King Kong and Godzilla and Jaws stuff everywhere.
Yeah. No, I love them all. I love the new series, but yeah, Fright Night though. Again, it's nothing like so. Like when you told me it was such a good movie, and again, I'm on the outside of the horror scheme. I kind of remember hearing about the remake. I didn't even know the remake was a remake, if that makes sense, because I never knew of Fright Night. So that was one that you forced on me that you were very forceful with for sure, and it was a good one. It was a good one.
There is a Fright Night Part 2, and it wasn't as good, so it kind of like flew way under the radar. But the original is fantastic, and I was actually thrilled because well, a week or two ago, I don't even remember when it was, but I was on a wrestling show called Fright Night, and they made the posters with the Fright Night house and us in the clouds, and I like marked out for myself because I was like, oh, my favorite movie, and now I'm on the poster.
Robby printed it out. It's in his bedroom right now.
It's hanging right there.
That was cool. I did see that.
But yeah, so great choice on that one. And my number 3 pick, this might be one that you've heard of. It got fairly popular for a little while, but then started to fly under the radar again. And let me cough into the microphone one more time.
You all right over there?
Yeah, my old man cough comes out at night.
That made me cough doing that.
So my number 3 pick is called Tales of Halloween. Have you heard of this?
Negative.
So this is an anthology horror movie. It's actually 10 short stories rolled into one movie, and it's so much fun, and it holds your attention because of the fact that it always changes from, like, you know, there's like a slasher one, there's a werewolf one, there's a murder one. Like, they all change all the way through. And it's a ton of fun. Tiffany Shepis stars in one of them, who is a fantastic horror actress. And I can't stop coughing.
It got you choked up.
I know. I love this movie so much that it's making me emotional. Yep.
All right, I'm back home, guys. I had to run over there and give Robby mouth to mouth. You all right?
Yeah, back. I'm back. Okay. So, like I was saying, Tales of Halloween, highly recommend it. And yeah, so Tiffany Shepis was my selling point because in the horror community, she's a pretty big deal to all of us who love our horror movies.
What year is this?
I believe 2010.
Oh, so recent-ish.
Let me check, actually. Oh, I'm sorry, 2015.
So I would call that recent.
Yes, it's fairly recent, and it's very good. And when it first came out, it got a lot of praise. And then I think it kind of started flying under the radar, which I don't understand. But I do think it's underrated. More people need to see it. And it does stream on a lot of different streaming services. So all these movies should be fairly easy to find.
So 10 short stories?
Yes.
Was it 2 hours?
Not even. About an hour and 40.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and I mean, the stories are great, and they keep you so enthralled, and you can't get bored because it just changes, 10 stories in an hour and a half, basically.
If they don't interlink at all, they're just...
I can't give you spoilers, but for the most part, throughout, you will not think that they do.
Ooh, bum, bum, bum. He's not saying, he's just saying, folks.
So, at that point, what are we on, 4?
4.
Well, that works out great because we talked about a lot of movies at this point, and I even mentioned Scream being one of my favorites, which is a great segue because Miss Katie Arquette is here, and she is the queen of the silver screen, and she has her 5 horror movie must-watches coming at you right now.
Hey everyone, it's Katie Arquette, the queen of the silver screen and the leading lady of the production. I wanted to chime in and give my all-time top 5 favorite horror/Halloween movies. So wanted to kick it off with first and foremost, Scream. If you don't know who Ghostface is, that is a problem. But you want to focus on the original trilogy. Scream 4 is nothing to really write home about, but anything after that brings its new perspective, and it's definitely worth checking out. But my all-time favorite, the first Scream trilogies. Another one that's really great is Chucky. If you've never seen Chucky, he will be in your nightmares. And no, I'm not talking about Freddy either. Chucky is someone that is a live doll who is killing everyone and trying to obsess a child. So definitely check it out. It's definitely a horror flick. Another one of my all-time favorites is Saw. If you have not seen the Saw franchise, you are truly missing out. Of course, if you're not into all the gore and blood and guts, might not be the best option, but I highly recommend the first one. I believe there are 8. Definitely check them out, and if not, definitely watch the first one. It is a classic. Another one of my all-time favorites is From Dusk Till Dawn. I'm a big vampire goober. I love them so much, and Tarantino is one of my favorite directors, and he also stars in it. So if you're looking for some old-fashioned 90s vampire gore and grunge, this is definitely one to check out, especially since George Clooney's in it. One of my last time and all-time favorites is The Little Vampire. This is a home to my heart type of movie, and if you've never seen it, I highly recommend. Again, it's about vampires, but it's a little boy who's discovering a best friend who happens to be a vampire and is trying to get him and his family back home. So if you've never seen it, I highly recommend it if you're looking for a little tearjerker or something to laugh at after all the blood and guts. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope it was enjoyable. Thanks.
All right, Chaz, what do you got? Bring us back.
Okay, so we're on 4 now. We're gonna stick with where I've been with this. You said that Fright Night was possibly the perfect '80s movie, and I actually said that too. But like, I kind of agree. But I also think this one is up there too. And now it's a movie that I again never heard of, and I've heard it from just the internet in this past decade and things like that. And that is Monster Squad.
Oh, great choice. This movie's so much fun.
So much fun. Still scary, but not absurd. I watched it with my niece when she was like 10 or 11, and she was fine. Like it wasn't that scary, and like, but it's scary enough. But what I love about it is the '80s take on the original crew, man. Like you got Frankie, and you got Dracula, and you got the creature, and Dracula is very evil and he's good, and they show that Frankie has a heart in it a little bit, and like it's just done really well. I feel like the people that made it understood the Universal classic monsters, who they were, their quirks, and they did a very good job putting it in there. Dracula was a complete dick, and like even to the point, I remember there's a spot in the movie where he picks up the little girl in the movie, probably like 8 years old, and he calls her a fucking bitch.
Yeah,
I love it.
He sure does. And also, we forgot to mention that the Wolfman has nards.
Or the Wolfman has nards, yeah. Because so to me, like the best way I could describe this movie before you talk about it is it's total 80s camp, but still has its seriousness. But it is like a modern 80s Avengers of like the modern 80s Avengers of the Universal monster movies meets the Goonies.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's
it's literally that. Like, and how can that be bad, man? It's such a good. Never even heard of it. I think somebody did it, talked about it on a podcast. I'm like, what is this? And then I just like had to like look it up, and like I was like, this is awesome. Like I bought it, I own it, I love it.
Well, if you ask me, it's better than the Goonies. I would much rather watch Monster Squad. And again, that's just me being the horror guy that I am. But
you don't like the Goonies, though, I think.
I don't, and it's a modern. I say modern, but it is like a modern take on the Universal monsters, and I love the Universal monsters. I'm a black and white movie guy. I'm an '80s movie guy, and this one just fits the mold of everything.
Yeah, it's probably, I would say, my number one of these underrated ones. But there's one that I want to talk about a little more because it might be a little controversial. But like yeah, this movie I just absolutely love. I watch it every year, and it's good to watch with teens, like 10, 11, 12. Like that's fine, I think.
Here's a little shout out to another movie that's not on my list but could be, is because it reminds me of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Okay, all right.
Because it's taking the Universal monsters and keeping their seriousness, but having fun with it and the comedy aspect of it. And obviously in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, there's no kids involved or anything like that. But same kind of a concept of like, let's make this fun, but let's make the Wolfman still the Wolfman, and Frankenstein still Frankenstein, and Dracula still is evil. And, and they just put a positive spin on it so that you could watch it with your family. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And except, he's trying to take over the world and get a virgin, right? He's trying to do some crazy shit.
Yes, he is
He's
actually.
a dick. Dracula's a dick in that movie. Like
He
he really is. And Frankie, I thought Frankenstein in that movie, just like the original, with like the little girl, the original's like showing his heart
Yes.
in that movie. And it's like, I just thought they did a good job. They really did.
I do too. And that being said, I'm staying in the 80s with my next pick because that's where I live. Musically, movies, doesn't matter. Like, that's where I live.
Aesthetically.
Aesthetically, for sure. Not today, though, just because we're doing this podcast. But I'm going with one that I know you've heard of this one, so you can't lie to me on this one. This is going to be Chopping Mall. And this came out in 1986. Do you know this one?
I think we've discussed it, but you're gonna have to like grease me up again.
So essentially, what happens in this film is after hours at a local mall, they hire these robots to patrol the mall and keep things safe. And the robots lose their shit and they just start murdering people. And this movie is so fun, and it's obviously campy. I mean, it's called Chopping Mall, and I highly recommend this to just not only get like a good laugh, but it is another one of those quintessential 80s movies. Todd Russell is in it, or Russell Todd, sorry, not Todd Russell. And he was in Friday the 13th.
I like Todd Russell better, but
well, I'll talk to him about changing it. And this one is also like streaming absolutely everywhere, so it's easy to find. I'm trying not to give spoilers on these movies, but I want to so bad. But
I'm spoiling the shit out of everything.
Well, there's actually a lot of big, in the horror community, big names, what we consider big names that do, tons and tons of horror movies. So I mentioned Russell Todd from Friday the 13th franchise. Kelly Maroney is in it, and we know her from Night of the Creeps. Barbara Crampton is in it from Reanimator and 1001, other movies. So like,
and Todd Russell.
And Todd Russell, who is actually Russell Todd's evil twin. And so it's cool because you get those, those big time, 80s actors like Barbara Crampton. And like I said, she's Reanimator, From Beyond.
Reanimator. That's a name I haven't thought of in 25 years.
That might be an underrated movie.
Since watching it in your basement.
Yeah.
Like 25 years ago. All I remember is it's Casey Jones, man.
Yeah.
That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's Casey Jones.
Yeah, didn't he have a role in that somewhere? Or he's not the main guy.
Isn't he the main guy?
No, he's not.
I just remember him being in there.
Well, we're gonna look that up now because I think we may be crossing over two movies.
Call him up right now.
I'm gonna call him.
Casey Jones. Are you there, Casey Jones?
Now, this is the important part because we each have one left. And I saved a really good one for my last one. Did you also save a really good one for your last one?
I think so.
Well, before we do this, our last cameo is coming from a guy who was at one time a professional wrestler. Ooh. And then he became Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. Oh. He also had roles in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and he was in the movie The Crazies, which are, great horror movies. He's a guy that I've met a few times. He's been on the podcast as well. And they call him the Big Schwag. This is Mr. Brett Wagner, the Lost Leatherface. And he's going to give you his 5 picks.
The Lost Leatherface. I like that.
Right?
All right, it's your boy, the Big Swag, Camperkill Leatherface from the 2003 remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is for the Halloween special for All Bets Are Off. Let me give you 5 movies you need to see. One, and some of these are going to be sleepers that you might not have heard of. Stake Land, S-T-A-K-E, Stake Land. Really cool. New vampire deal that came out a few years ago. Great movie. Part 2 is okay, but part 1 you got to see. Same people did a movie called Late Phases, P-H-A-S-E-S, werewolves in a retirement community. Fun. Of course, Shockwaves, which some of you may have never heard of. Shockwaves with Peter Cushing. Nazi Zombies, love it. 1978, Dawn of the Dead. And then, of course, a movie I was in that if you haven't seen it, it is great. The Crazies with Timothy Olyphant. and the Big Schwag. There you go! 5 you should see. See ya.
All right, so that was Brett Wagner, and you said you liked The Lost Leatherface.
That's cool.
And the reason they call him that is because he went uncredited for playing Leatherface in that movie.
Them sons of bitches.
He did. And then years later, when it surfaced that he was, Leatherface, obviously he started doing all the conventions and the cons, but he does have a lot of other horror movies under his belt as well, so.
I stand with the Lost Leatherface.
Well, stand with him and give him your last choice.
Okay, so this could be controversial, but
All right.
it's not. But it is. But it's not. But it is. And the reason being is a... Now, I've discussed this with you. You know it's coming. Is this a remake? But not really, right? Like, because it's different, right? So before...
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about The Phantom of the Opera.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I am not talking about the silent one from the 20s, which, critically loved.
Mm-hmm.
I just recently watched a couple. I just recently watched one from like the 40s, which was fantastic. And I just watched one from the 60s, which was a pretty good one as well. No, it was pretty great. But I'm talking about the 2004 one with Gerard Butler, Emmy Rossum. But this is the musical version.
Yes.
And the musical version is something I absolutely love. I've seen 1,000,000 times. Okay, that's an exaggeration. I've seen 3 times. But like, it doesn't tour that often, come to Buffalo. So I've seen the musical 3 times. I love the musical. I love the movies. But, a lot of people shit on musicals and movie musicals. Musical snobs hate movie musicals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And horror snobs are going to hate it because it's a fucking musical.
It depends, because Sweeney Todd was a musical, and that did really well.
Okay.
That did really well.
I don't think this movie did well, but the musical is the greatest, like one of the biggest selling musicals in the history of theater.
Did you get into this because of Paul Stanley?
Yes and no. I always had interest of it because he's such a cool concept of a character. Like, what musical is got like a basically ghost? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially in the 90s, right? But like, yes, Paul Stanley served as the Phantom in like 1997, 1998, 1999 in Toronto. I never got a chance to see it. That's my idol. Our Aunt Linda got to see it.
Mm-hmm.
She said he did a pretty good job, and she's kind of a theater snob. I mean, he's got the perfect voice for it, and like, he did a great job. But like, I don't just like it because of that. And like, I've seen it on stage a few times, but I love the movie. I thought they did the movie justice. They did a lot. They did mostly all the music that was in there, and Gerard Butler sounds great, and Emmy Rossum sounds great. And I'm sure there's 2004 auto tune, but whatever, who gives a shit? And then like, they do a good job making you feel for him, and that's what the musical has done more than anything. And that's what I wanted to bring up, because I didn't even watch this rewatch because I know it. The original silent one, it's hard to feel for the Phantom.
Yeah.
In the 40s one, you started to feel for him a little bit. And the one I watched in the 60s, you kind of understood it more and you felt for him. In this one, by the end of it, and you can even talk about it with the musical. I brought my nieces to see it. There's a certain point where he's kidnapping this bitch. He's trying to leave her to live in his dungeon and sing only for him for the rest of his life. But you feel for this guy, and there's part of you that's like, she should just stay. She should stay with him. He loves her and he'll take care of her. And it's like, it's just done so beautifully. And like, I just don't think either the theater snobs or the horror snobs give it a fair chance, because it's kind of lost in that sense on both people.
It is, and I think part of the reason is because Lon Chaney played such an iconic Phantom in 1925 that people don't want to think of any other Phantom. I don't think it's necessarily even that it's the musical. I think it's more so like, well, we already have the Phantom that we want as our horror icon. He's the face of it. And
but that's true, and you're right about that. But it's double, it's twofold, because the theater snobs won't give anybody a chance because of Michael Crawford from the 80s.
Yeah,
You know,
Yeah,
so
right,
Sarah
right.
Brightman and Michael Crawford, the original cast, right? They
Yeah.
were the fucking cast for like 8 years of
I
this.
think that's a great pick, and I don't think that it's like necessarily controversial. I think it actually is severely underrated, and maybe because we talked about it, that we can drum up some interest and people will let us know that they actually went and checked it out.
I love it. And I'll tell you that the '40s movie and the '60s movie is on the cock right now. I just watched them recently on the cock, which is Peacock, folks. But and they're great. And like I said that they did make you feel for the Phantom a little bit. I think that's the point: is you want to feel for the Phantom a little bit because it messes with you because he's being a douchebag, but there's reasons.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is that you're supposed to feel for him, but not know why you feel for him.
Yeah.
And it's cool. And there was other movies that played off of that. Phantom of the Mall is a movie that came out in the 80s, and it's the same concept, and it's the same idea, like, oh, poor guy, and then you're like, oh, what an asshole. Like, it's just,
But
because...
it brings you through these emotions because you see like whether what movie you watch.
Mhm.
And like what I liked about the '60s, I'm getting into the diatribe here. What I like about the one they did with the '60s is they made it really about music. So either way, he's always a musical savant. He's a musical genius. And any so the way they played it in the '60s version is he tried to sell his music to a publisher, and the guy stole his music.
Mhm.
That's shitty, you know what I mean? And he tried to like get his music back. That's how he burned his face, whatever.
Yeah.
So like in the movie, which is a little more in the musical movie, which is a little more key towards the musical, is he was just a freak and had always this love for music and just a savant for music, but because of his facial deformities, he decided to just go into the bellows of the earth and fell in love with an opera singer and wanted to just love and cherish her, but obviously didn't know how to handle it in the free world and everything. And it's just like it's just done so beautifully.
That actually ended up being a really good segue for my last pick.
Which is Cats, the musical.
Yes.
That's fucking scary from that movie.
Well, so mine is also a little controversial because the horror community is going to say that's not underrated. It's really fucking good. And it is. However, people who aren't so deep into the horror community are going to say, I didn't see that. So my last pick is from 2006, and it's called Hatchet. And I got it in the same bin that I got 2001 Maniacs, and I ended up loving it. And now there's 4 of them. And so they did gain notoriety and steam, especially within the horror community, but it's still underrated out to like, anybody else. The reason why I say it's a good segue is because the main character, Victor Crowley, who's played by Kane Hodder, which we know got very famous playing Jason, is deformed, and he was born deformed. And because of his deformity, he was picked on, laughed at, whatever, and his father ends up accidentally being murdered by him with a hatchet because they're picking on him on Halloween, and they burn his house down by mistake. And when his dad is trying to save him, or I'm sorry, he doesn't murder his dad murders him by accident. And when his dad is trying to save him, Kane Hodder also plays the dad, hits him with a hatchet in the face when he's trying to break down the door. And so now this deformed man who lives in the swamps of Louisiana, his spirit comes back when people invade his swamp. And you kind of are like, well, this guy was picked on his whole life, and I understand why he's pissed off, but now he's killing innocent people. And that's where it becomes, and it's very gory, very bloody, and the movies get campier as they go along, and they even get a little more comical as they go along, kind of like Nightmare on Elm Street. And it makes them very much like 80s horror movies. So although it may not be underrated in the horror community, it's underrated in general just out in the world. So maybe I can get some people who aren't big into horror that just love Halloween and are always looking for something to watch to check out Hatchet.
And you're right, because again, I know about it from you. Like when you mentioned it, I knew it was Kane Hodder. So I've known about it because of you and my horror movie friends. But before that, no fucking idea.
Well, and in the later films, too, you start to see other horror movie stars, which, again, make them more endearing to the horror community, like Danielle Harris, who obviously was in Halloween 4 and 5, and the remake of, Halloween, Rob Zombie's 1 and 2. She was in both of those. And then you see her come to the Hatchet series, and then you see Felissa Rose from Sleepaway Camp, and then you see again Tiffany Shepis, who I mentioned from Tales of Halloween. So horror movie people really start to get in depth when they start seeing that. And then the first movie, you see cameos by Robert Englund, Tony Todd. So knowing that Kane Hodder, Robert Englund, and Tony Todd are in that movie is pretty cool.
They didn't all get in a fight.
There was no fight. There was no breakdown.
They missed a golden opportunity.
So Chaz, that was my 5. That was your 5. I think we got some pretty damn good lists, and I hope that people will hit subscribe and leave comments and tell us what they think as well.
Well, I'm going to get roasted for the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. But
Yeah.
if I could bring some light to that, if I get like 2 people saying, look, it wasn't that bad, I'll feel vindicated. And seriously, folks, put it aside. Musicals aren't that lame. Watch the Phantom of the Opera 2004, please.
Yeah,
the songs are good too.
There, you had some good picks there, and I'll throw it back to Friday Part 7. Like, give that one a shot. Lar Park Lincoln does a great job in that film. And, again, these are underrated. And not only did we give our 5, but we had all those cameos come on and give their 5. So I think people have a lot of catching up to do. So get watching those movies if there's any that you haven't seen, and hit that subscribe button. And if, you don't have time to sit and watch the video, then we are on all streaming platforms in your car, including, which we're on now, SiriusXM. So check out the SiriusXM app, and you can find All Bets Are Off with Robby Vegas. Chaz Stanley, thanks for being back for your first time since February.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I'm just going to plug myself. You can find me on all the interwebs and all the podcast platforms, but not SiriusXM. You're going to have to help me out with that one. It would be the Chazcast. Look it up. You can find me live streaming on Twitch, doing record reviews and fun, goofy stuff as well. The Chazcast.
All right, man. Well, then we will see you guys next time on All Bets Are Off and the Chazcast. And who knows? Chaz might be back before the end of the year. There's always Christmas episodes to do.
Oh, I'm coming. I'm just gonna like interrupt an interview you have.
just walk into the room. Excuse me.
Yeah, I know where you live. I was just there giving you mouth to mouth.
That's true. That's true. All right, guys. We'll catch you next time. Hit subscribe.